pozdrav svim dobrim ljudima, svim slušalcima Radio Liberuma. Možda nisam Željko Kerum, ali slušam Radio Liberum. Dobra večer i dobrodošli u 14. posebnu emisiju Sat istine u produkciji Radio Liberuma i OPPT Hrvatska. U režiji, naravno kao i obično, Barni i Valter za mikrofonom. Večeras imamo priliku ugostiti čovjeka posvećenog istini, pisca, istraživača, znanstvenika i osnivača UBUNTU političke stranke i oslobodilačkog pokreta, koji dobiva veliki zamah u njegovoj domovini buđenjem svijesti ljudi i spoznajom tko oni zaista jesu. Riječ je o Michael Tellingeru, budućem predsjedniku Južnoafričke republike. Nakon intervjua s Michaelom ugostit ćemo Dražena u hrvatskom dijelu emisije, tako da evo pozivamo slušatelje iz Hrvatske da ostanu sa nama i nakon što završimo intervju sa Michaelom. Dakle, da ne duljim previše, idemo se prebaciti na engleski jezik. And now switching to English. Good evening and welcome to special radio show Hour of Truth. That is our 14th show, produced by Radio Liberum and OPPT Croatia volunteer crew. Tonight we have an opportunity to talk with a man committed to pure truth, author, writer, researcher and founder of Ubuntu political party and liberation movement that is gaining great momentum in his homeland with awakening of human consciousness and with more and more people becoming aware every day of who they really are. We have with us Michael Tellinger, future president of Republic of South Africa. Michael, welcome to OPPT Croatia radio show Hour of Truth. Michael?
Michael doesn't hear us.
We have small technical problems. Barney is dealing with them right now. It seems that Michael is not hearing us. Michael, are you there? Michael, are you
Vladimir,
there?
if you can hear me,
we can hear you now.
I'm struggling to hear you. For some reason, I've lost speakers, and I can't hear you. I'm going to try and do what I can to restore my speakers here. I don't know, it just suddenly went quiet. I was listening to you talk and give the intro, and then suddenly everything went dead on this side. So I'm going to try and restore my speakers. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Now you're back. Something happened.
Okay, not a problem. I did introduce you shortly. I hope that you did hear that. I know that our listeners did. So I guess that we should just move on, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you're back, because I thought there was something wrong with my computer. It was obviously something technical.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, first question for all our guests is traditionally the same. So I'm gonna shoot it right up at your direction. What would you say, Michael? Who is Michael Tellinger?
Well, Michael Tellinger is an inquiring mind, a living, breathing human being, first of all, like everybody else on this planet. We are born of flesh and blood and infinite soul, with inalienable rights from our Creator, and that, I believe, is fundamentally who Michael Tellinger is. And this living, breathing human being has chosen a certain journey in his life, and I am now living that path and the journey I guess I chose for myself, and I must admit that it's an exciting journey, making interesting discoveries and being able to share that, being fortunate enough to be in a position to share the discoveries and the information with people like you and millions of other people around the world.
We don't have millions of people listening to us right now, but we have, what, Barney, 5,000 or 6,000 right now? Log name?
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay, we have quite a few people listening to us. Michael, maybe you could tell us briefly about your journey that led you to this moment of now. When did you realize that something is wrong with things in the world, and how did your journey actually begin? Can you pinpoint that aha moment, that moment that many people experienced all over the world in recent months and years?
Well, I think it's important to make many of the people that will be listening to this feel that they're not alone, because there are millions of people around the world that are experiencing the same elation and moment of excitement when they realize that there's a lot more to life than what that has been shoved down our throats. And that's a beautiful moment when you realize this and you lose the fear. But in my personal life, I suppose my real awakening came in 1979, when I was a 19-year-old student at Wits University in Johannesburg, and I read Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods, and that made me realize that there's a lot more interesting and exciting things going on in the universe than what we are taught at school and at university. Now, I was studying pharmaceutics at Wits University at that stage, and already at that stage, being at medical school studying pharmaceutics, I realized that there was something dramatically wrong with the human anatomy, with the whole genetic makeup, with molecular biology and the cells, and why is it that cells die after a certain time, and that there weren't very straightforward answers for simple questions. And that made me realize that there were a lot more questions than answers, and that carried on for a long time, until 2005, really. And in 2005, I realized that I had to take my long period and long life of research and reading and studying, and put it into a book. And while I was researching my first book, Slave Species of God, I inadvertently stumbled upon this mysterious thing called money and the origins of money. And you know where that leads to. So I think it was really in 2005, while researching the origins of humankind, who are we, where do we come from, and why are we here, that I also realized that this thing called money is actually the true enemy of the human race. And those that control the supply of money are those that are controlling the events on our planet. And I realized that if we take money out of the system, we basically solve all the problems of the world overnight. And that was my big awakening moment.
Yeah. I actually wanted to ask you a question about that book of yours, your first book, Slave Species of God. You talked about in that book about who created us humans, and about real history that is buried in the mist of time, about events that took place far away in our history, many thousands of years before first written tablets of Babylon, right? And we all know that understanding the past is important to see where are we going. Can you share with us your discoveries from that past that you researched, that you find most important for people to know?
Well, the most important thing is, when you start asking the questions, who are we, where do we come from, and why are we here, and you're prepared to keep an open mind, your journey leads you down very interesting paths. And people that are listening to this, that have done this, will know what I'm talking about. And it takes you down paths of history and the history of our planet that is different from what we are taught at school and taught at university, and what fills our mainstream history books. And you start to realize that most of human history is actually completely distorted. And what we think we know about our human history are mostly filled with lies and deceptions. And I discovered that there is a huge amount of information encoded in the Sumerian tablets, in the cuneiform Sumerian texts, that have been studied and written about by many scholars. But some of the most predominant scholars and researchers in that field has been Zecharia Sitchin. And Zecharia Sitchin has given us probably some of the most breathtaking translations and his interpretations of the ancient Sumerian texts, some of which come from about 4000 BC. And it was really those translations of those Sumerian texts that you realize that our history is not as rosy and as clean as the Bible or the history books would like it to be. It also becomes evident that there's been a very successful attempt to hide history from mainstream population of our planet by mainstream academia for the last 200 years especially. But the actual destruction of ancient knowledge and esoteric knowledge of ancient civilizations started very fiercely about 500 years ago, when the explorers from Europe, whether it was Spain or Portugal or Holland or England, when they started traveling around the world and conquering native populations around the world, the first thing they did, which was, I believe, an instruction from the Vatican, was to destroy all the knowledge of the native populations. And if you think about the destruction that these conquistadors and these so-called explorers, they were more like thugs and not explorers, they destroyed so much knowledge and information then that what they've actually done is create a species with amnesia. And this is what I believe we are today. We're a species with amnesia because 500 years ago, what these explorers did is they severed the people from their ancestors and the knowledge of their ancestors. And they made it very difficult for the native populations of the world to continue practicing the ancient traditions, because their ancient traditions are replaced by Western and Eurocentric religion and belief systems and history books and education system and mathematics and science and physics and astronomy. All the native populations of the world's basic ancient knowledge was replaced by all the Eurocentric philosophies and doctrines that we have today. And if it wasn't for the knowledge keepers in these continents around the world that have carried on in secret, in shamanic tradition, in other native tribes and doctrines, that they kept the knowledge alive for hundreds of years, we would not have known or retained any of this ancient knowledge. And as you may know, in South Africa, one of the preeminent wise men of Southern Africa is Baba Credo Mutwa, who is a preeminent shaman who has shared a lot of information with me and with the world in his life. Unfortunately, just like Nelson Mandela, Credo Mutwa is also, I think he's 93 years old now, and I don't think he's going to be with us for much longer.
Tell me, Michael, what is your opinion on this? Why is the current educational system based on lies? Why are we taught in schools that first civilizations emerged in the valleys of Euphrates and Tigris?
It's all connected to money, and this is, I know it sounds crazy to people if you know, when I say this, just throw it out there. Everything in our lives today, all the information we receive, all the education that is shoved down our throats, the social structure, the way we live, the way we behave, everything in our lives is totally and utterly controlled by money. And it's not the money that is important here. Money is just the tool that is used as a means of control over the people. And this is the big realization that we need people to understand. It's not about the money, it's about the control. So when you ask why is it that they teach us all this nonsense at school, it's because school, the way that it's been set up, the entire education system is not about skills for life and skills for survival and skills for creating abundance for the humanity and for your abundance for your community and those communities around you so that you can live a life of bliss and life of happiness. The education system we have is all about indoctrination, feeding our children's heads, and we're all victims of it, all of us, unless you've never been to school. Spending 12 years of your most important years of your life filling the minds of our children with lies, disinformation, manipulation, making them fear authority and respect authority and respond to instructions from anyone that looks as if they are in a position of authority. To do what? To regurgitate information so that you can get an A in your exam, and at the end of this process you get a certificate which you then use to go and get a job. And what do jobs do? Jobs pay money. So you realize how the entire education system is just a platform to launch slaves and workers into the money trap cycle that is controlled by the banking families and the royal bloodlines that have been in control of the production of money for thousands of years.
Michael, up to your best knowledge, what did the dawn of human race look like, and when did it actually started?
Well, what I find is this is all in my book, Slave Species of God, and it is unavoidable. When you start looking at the origins of humankind, sooner or later you're going to run into these beings called the Anunnaki. And the more you research the Anunnaki, the more you realize how influential their impact was on this planet, and not just our planet, but probably thousands of planets around our entire galaxy, and probably other galaxies and other planets in other galaxies around the universe. They are masters of technology. They have absolute knowledge beyond our comprehension, of moving beyond space-time, moving through wormholes. Pretty much everything that you see in the TV series Stargate, they think of it as Anunnaki understanding knowledge and technology. And it is very clear that the Anunnaki were instrumental in cloning a hybrid species called Homo sapiens, or the human race. And they were responsible for the genetic makeup that is in each and every one of us. And it is very clear that from the Sumerian texts and from the research that I've done here is for those people that still think that Zechariah Sitchin was, not always telling the truth, I think put that to rest, because what I've contributed to this bit of research of human origins and so forth is I've presented the physical evidence of what Zechariah Sitchin has written about the giant Anunnaki gold mining empire at the southern tip of Africa that was called the Abzu, where all the gold and precious metals were mined by the Anunnaki. And the fact that it's all about gold, mostly about gold. I've presented the evidence that there are more than 10 million stone structures here that are connected to gold mining, that are connected to knowledge of ancient technology, of advanced technology from ancient times that they used for the gold mining, and that they cloned a species called Homo sapien to help them, or be the slave. That's why I called it slave species of God, God with a small g. And they cloned a species so that they'd be their slave to mine the gold, to do all the hard work. And people ask, well, if they were so advanced technologically, why didn't they just dig for the gold themselves? And the answer is that there weren't many of them. There were just a few of them. And they only had a little bit of the technology that they could control. But if you breed and clone thousands, if not millions, of beings that can do the work for you, you're going to dig a lot more gold than just 40 or 50 or 100 of you. So the answer is very simple. And also, human beings and the clones that they created to be the slaves for the gold mines are disposable. You just replace one. If they break, you just replace one. You don't have to fix it. They just breed like flies, and you can keep using them as slaves. They never run out. You never ever run out of the machine. The slaves keep breeding. And this is the sad situation that revolves around the origins of humankind. That our entire presence on this planet is completely and utterly connected to our obsession and our connection to gold.
We'll talk about gold a bit later, but now that you mentioned it, if we were created as slaves, why are we humans equipped with such an amazing capabilities and creativity? Wouldn't that be counterproductive for the slave masters?
Yes and no. And this is where it gets really interesting. And this is when you start understanding the deeper mind and thoughts of the Anunnaki. And I'm specifically referring here to the Anunnaki by the name of Enki. And when you read the Sumerian tablets, you'll see the word Enki and the name Enki everywhere. Enki was the guy, one of the two brothers. Enki was responsible for the gold mining and who set up the gold mining empire here in southern Africa, South Africa and Zimbabwe, parts of Botswana and Mozambique, and obviously Lesotho and Swaziland. But it's mostly South Africa and Zimbabwe that the gold mines and the structures that I've discovered are found. And the energy that's connected, the energy generating devices that are connected to these structures. So Enki, when they decided they needed help and they needed to clone a species to be their slave, there are, and especially in Zechariah Sitchin's translations, which I find are becoming more and more relevant and more important, because I'm finding the physical evidence for it. Almost on a, I haven't been doing much research in the field lately, but for the last 5 years, while doing the research in the field and studying the structures and the tools and the artifacts and the ancient gold mines, something started to make more and more sense, because there are many examples in the translations where you hear discussions, philosophical discussions between Enki and Enlil, Enki's brother in the northern hemisphere, that was in the Middle East and the Near East, who was controlling the space command of the Anunnaki, which was probably their headquarters and so forth. And they had a big dilemma. They knew that they needed help, and they wanted to create a creature that could help them mine the gold. And some of the Anunnaki, like Enlil, were very keen to create just a dumb creature that they could clone and create, and like you see in the science fiction movies, they cloned them in these giant amniotic sacs in special chambers. They weren't bred by other human beings, because the other evidence that I have and information is that for the first few thousand years, while they started cloning these first humans to be slaves in the mines, they were actually cloning them in these cloning chambers. They weren't coming out of other human beings or other Anunnaki. And they were only cloning males. They weren't females. They were not actually even male. They were like a non-sexual hermaphrodite of a species. But they had a dilemma, and Enlil wanted to create a dumb species that they could use and abuse for as long as they needed them, and then just wipe them out when they didn't need them anymore. The way we treat animals, right? Pretty much the way we breed cows and pigs and sheep. We use them and abuse them for our own benefit, and we don't think we're doing anything wrong. Well, many people are of the belief that we are doing something terribly wrong to the animals that we breed and then slaughter. But that's a whole nother discussion, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the dilemma was, do they create an intelligent species that can rise in their own consciousness and evolve in consciousness, or do they keep the species dumbed down so that it does not rise in consciousness? And
I guess that the other option prevailed.
Well, actually, this is where we start to realize that Enki chose to go the second route, to create a creature that could and will rise in its own consciousness, evolve in its own consciousness, and realize what it is, where it comes from, and why it's here, so that it can attain unity consciousness with the divine creation and understand where it comes from. Now, this is very important because for those people that have been watching Star Trek for more than 50 years now, will be familiar with a Star Trek explanation or term called Prime Directive.
Yes.
Right? You've heard the Prime Directive.
Absolutely. I'm a Star Trek fan.
Exactly. So, and the Prime Directive says that if you land on a foreign planet, you may not interfere with the consciousness or the road or the path of evolution of the beings and the species that you find. You can interact with them. You can. Are you still there?
Yes, absolutely.
I thought I lost you for a second. You can interact with them. You can do what you want, but you may not interfere with their rise of consciousness. And this is really important because this is what, when Enki decided to encode much more of the DNA that will allow us to rise in consciousness, which scientists in the last 20 years have recognized as junk DNA. The small part of the DNA that we use, the 3% that we were using for a long, long time, was the Neanderthal or the caveman DNA, while the 97% of the DNA is actually the important DNA that is now kicking in and allowing us to contemplate our own existence, to contemplate our own consciousness, which creates a feedback mechanism, which in itself, through the laws of nature and the laws of attraction and so forth, starts to activate our own DNA, combined with the frequencies that are coming from the galactic core and the great sun that are activating our DNA. In any case, we're now rapidly expanding our junk DNA to use more and more of this DNA, allowing us to rise in our own consciousness and realize, as many other researchers have told us, that we're actually created as some of the most divine beings in creation, and that we are very close to realizing that we have the same capacity because we are one with God, we are one with the Creator, and we are actually destined to be co-creators of everything in our reality and in the universe. This is a spectacular situation we find ourselves in here. And I believe that part of the sudden explosion of enlightenment, millions of people becoming enlightened and exploding in consciousness every day, waking up with new thoughts, new ideas in their minds, not knowing where these thoughts and ideas come from. They come from the cosmos. They come from the morphogenetic field. They come from the Akashic records that we just now allowing ourselves to tap into and realize that we have this infinite potential, and that potential has been, for the past 6,000 years or more, suppressed by those that introduced money to the system, to humanity, have controlled the entire process of humanity, our evolution, the industrialization, the corporatization of our countries, and our humanity, the fact that we are turned into corporations as human beings. All these activities have been very maliciously controlled by those people that realize that unless they introduce some form of draconian control, which they chose money for, unless they did that, humanity would have reached much higher levels of consciousness a long time ago, and they would have lost control of this planet. So it's a fascinating story that is really deeply convoluted and involved in so many ways. But we're beginning to unravel it, and I think money is at the center of this.
Yeah. You mentioned stone structures in South Africa, millions of them. They're mainly circular structures, and what I read in your books and learned from your videos is that these structures are made of very special kind of stones.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, these stone structures are really, that's amazing because some people think that this is new. This is not. This has been going on for 500 years already. The first reference we have in sort of modern records is from the Portuguese when they first landed on the coast of Mozambique in the late 1400s, and they came across the people that lived there. And they started coming across these stone structures and the native people living there. And they asked them, well, where do these stone structures come from? Did you build them? And they were told very clearly by the native population that lived amongst the stone structures. They said, we don't know who built them. And sometimes they didn't even use them. They just lived nearby. And so it's very clear that 500 years ago already, the native population of Southern Africa did not know who built those stone structures or where they came from. And that's very important because that's not what our modern history books tell us. Our modern history books tell us that they were built by the migrating tribes 200 or 300 years ago, and they just assume knowledge because for some arbitrary reason.
How old are these structures?
Well, the discoveries that I've made is, first of all, that they're not just a few of these structures. In 1891, Theodore Bent estimated that there were about 4,000 of these structures in Southern Africa. By 1974, Roger Summers calculated about 20,000 of these structures. Then I got involved in 2007, and within the first 6 months, I thought that there were at least 100,000 of these structures, because I walked through at least 1,000 of them myself. So I realized that there must be at least 100 more than what I've walked through, 100 times more. And then I started counting them. And after doing what I believe a reasonably scientific approach, I worked out that there were at least 10 million of these structures.
10 million.
And that changes everything.
Tell us a little bit about the kind of stones they are made of. They're very special kind of stones.
Yeah, this is really important because all these small little steps that lead to discovering and making conclusions that ultimately led me to realizing that we're dealing with sound. Because, as you mentioned, the stones are very special stones, and they have very special resonant harmonic capacity. And I call them stones that ring like bells. And if you go onto my website, michaeltellinger.com, you'll see a few video links there, or just go to YouTube and Google my name. You'll see me showing you some of these stones that ring like bells. And I realized when I discovered that the stones in the walls of these structures ring like bells, that I realized we're dealing with sound properties, sound and acoustics and frequencies. And we're not dealing with enclosures for cows or cattle, like our historians would like us to believe.
Yeah, without doors. Yeah. They don't have doors, right?
That's right. Because main reason, they have no doors and entrances. So if they have no doors and entrances, they can't be dwellings for people, and they can't be cattle enclosures for cows. So they've got to be something else. And it's when I discovered that the stones in the walls are either a rock named hornfels, which is also known in geological terms as ringstone, or a very densely compacted dolerite, which to an untrained eye actually looks a lot like the hornfels, which also rings like rings like bells. Dolerite is a form of granite, I suppose you can call it that as well, and the granites and the dolerites that they used at some of these sites also ring like bells. They have very strong resonant properties. And remember, the main component in all of the stone is silica, crystal, silica dioxide, crystalline substances. The rocks are actually metamorphosized quartzite. So we're dealing with crystal technology and quartz technology that is actually utilized in these stone circles. And then I realized that the sound property of these stone circles, the reason why there are more than 10 million of these stone circles, and yet no two look the same. Each one is completely unique. Now that's unbelievable until you realize why and what they are. And the reason why each one is completely unique is because every stone circle that is made up of specific internal structures and a larger structure, each stone circle is actually the cymatic pattern, as in from cymatics, Hans Jenny's study and teaching on cymatics, and the shape that is created out of sound when you manifest sound through the surface of a metal plate, and it turns the sand or the rice into these beautiful patterns.
Yeah.
It creates these perfect patterns. So imagine that on a small scale. Every stone circle is one of those on a much larger scale. But instead of grains of sand on a metal plate, you've got big stones that weigh between 10 and 50 kilos, sometimes as much as 300 kilos, in the walls of these stone circles. And yes.
Please finish.
Yeah, no. So what you're seeing is actually you're seeing the cymatic pattern of the sound frequency as it comes out of planet Earth at that specific point. And that sound resonates through the stones, creating a very strong sound frequency that resonates and is amplified by that shape in the stone, and the silica in the stone amplifies it. And because of its of whatever activity that happens in there, it starts to create electromagnetic fields around and inside the stone circles. So we've measured very strong sound frequencies coming out of the walls, only on the inside, nothing on the outside, always only on the inside, and very strong electromagnetic fields inside the stone circles that just are absolutely mind-blowing. So when I say that they are energy-generating devices, I say that because we have scientific evidence and proof and measurements that show us that they are giving us free energy every second of every day. All we need to do is figure out how to use it.
Okay, I do have a question about these things from a foreign country, from one of my friends who is sensitive to energy. And by the way, she is sending many thanks from the bottom of her heart for all your efforts and for your consciousness that you chose to point into the liberation of human race. That is her short message for you, and I will now read what she wrote to me about these specific stones, and at the end there will be a question for you. When I heard sound these stones make when they touch, it sounded like the most beautiful and pure sounds of musical instruments to me. And it is easy to think when all these stones in circles vibrate, they produce symphony as orchestra, and then connects with another orchestra, as you described, with another circle. And that sound does not expand only on Earth, but it penetrates deep into universe and sends its message. It can as well be a portal to higher dimensions, and maybe even a tool to transform matter in a way to align it with universal order and universal law. Do you have, now there is a question for you from my friend. Do you have some new informations about that? What could these stone structures be? and what they were used for in those ancient times.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. I appreciate it. And I think your friend is probably very close to the truth. Look, we're discovering new information almost on a daily basis around the subject of sound and how important sound is in all of creation and all of our activity. Sound is the source of all things. And this is why it's important to come back. And I've been talking about this now for, I guess about 6 years now in my presentations about sound being the source of things, and how this is why they used sound for everything as a free source of energy, to create wormholes and portals and transportation and dematerialization and teleportation. It's all sound that actually is the key and the fundamental tool that is used in all those applications and that technology. And then they use the stone circles, as your friend very clearly suggests, and I would agree with her, that they could be used and may still be active as soon as we choose to use them, to send messages across the universe instantly and communicate and connect through wormholes, through the energies that they create above the stone circle. And the reason I say this is because of Adam's calendar. And I'm sure you are going to come possibly to the subject of Adam's calendar.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because so I'm just going to jump there now, because Adam's calendar is where we measured the highest energies and the highest frequencies. For people that
Volcano is underneath it, right?
Well, this is what the measurements are suggesting to us, but we know that there is no volcano, so there must be some very powerful energies.
Something else, yeah.
Something else underground. And I just realized, and it's all starting to come together, all because of the sound. When I realized that it was sound that was the key thing here, and not cattle enclosures or dwellings and any of that. There were energy devices. And to answer your friend's question, I believe without a shadow of doubt that they were used for the mining of gold, but not only for the mining of gold, for the cloning of the slave species. So they had a constant supply of workers, for healing, for communication, technology. Look, they were like Nikola Tesla's tower, on Long Island.
Yeah.
But there were just many of them. And so they could do a lot of different things because of the advanced technology that these guys understand. They understand the laws of nature and how everything works. And that's why it was easy for them. And where to find the gold, how to get it out of the ground, how to process it. And that's why they didn't use the very destructive and poisonous processes of leaching and cyanide and sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid to, get gold and separate the gold from all the other minerals in the crushed ore. They just used sound and frequency to crush the stone, to crush the ore, to separate the elements, to purify the gold, and then move the gold off this planet. And this is where Adam's calendar plays a very important role, because Adam's calendar was rediscovered by Johann Heine in 2003 by accident, and it turns out to be an ancient stone calendar site that predates anything else that we have discovered to date. And the date goes back to about 285,000 years. Now, people say, well, how do you come up with that? Yeah, how do you come up with that number? Well, there are various reasons and ways that I came up with that number, and I looked at every possible aspect. I looked at the erosion, the geological erosion on the stones, on the lichen growth. I looked at alignments with the stars, and astronomers have suggested that the last time that the alignment to Orion's belt would have been in place was about 75,000 years ago. So we've got an alignment to Orion. We've got a Horus stone there. So we got pyramids in the distance that are aligned to it in the valley. But so we're looking at probably at least 75,000 years ago that it was built. And then I discovered a little section in one of Zachariah Sitchin's books that he talks about Enki, and it says that 40 Shar after arriving on Earth, Enki built himself a special place of observing on the edge of a cliff in the deep Abzu, in line with his abode in the north and the peaks. It's just, when I found that, I couldn't believe my eyes. And remember, Zachariah Sitchin did not know anything about Adam's calendar. And yet,
you also mentioned that great shaman Credo Mutwa was initiated or something like that at that exact place, right?
Yes, Credo Mutwa. When I first met with Credo Mutwa, and I showed him my copy of Adam's calendar, he started to cry. He just burst out crying, and I was amazed. He just completely became totally emotional, and he told me he never thought he would see that special place again. And then he told me the story how he was initiated there in 1937 as a young shaman, and that it was one of the two most sacred sites on earth connected to the creation of the human race.
What is the second place?
The second place, he said, was Tsodilo Hills in northern Botswana, which is known as the Serpent Cave at Tsodilo Hills. Because that is where the Anunnaki were doing a lot of the genetic experiments with the creatures that they were trying to clone. And then eventually, when they got it right, they had the birthing ceremony, or the first, I don't know, what do you want to call it, the ceremony regarding the new species being, created on Earth, was actually happened at Adam's calendar, or as Credo Mutwa calls it, Inzalo Yelanga in Zulu, which means birthplace of the sun. And it means not necessarily the sun as in S-U-N, the sunrise, but the sun, S-O-N, the son of the gods, because this is where the offspring of the gods were created, because we have half Anunnaki DNA and half hominid DNA, and this is why they shut down most of the Anunnaki DNA, because that would give us great abilities, which they did not want us to have, which we are now beginning to experience. So just to come back to the age of Adam's calendar, if you translate Zachariah Sitchin's writing, 40 Shar after arriving on Earth, Enki built himself a special place of observing. 40 Shar, if you then take Zachariah Sitchin's calculations and say 450,000 years ago, 435,000 years ago, the Anunnaki arrived on Earth looking for gold, and if one Shar is 3,600 years, where we get our 360 degrees in one cycle, in one orbit, and in the circle, and for other esoteric reasons as well, or knowledge of sacred geometry. If you multiply 40 by 3,600 and you subtract it from 435,000, you get 285,000 years. So
that is
285,000. Yeah. Enki built himself a special place of observing. And that's interesting because according to modern genetic evaluation and the mitochondrial Eve studies, we are told that the first humans seem to have appeared based on our DNA and the mitochondrial DNA specifically. First humans seem to have appeared on Earth between 250 and 300,000 years ago. So it fits that calculation perfectly.
Yeah, time frame is perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned gold a couple of times, and that is also something that I wanted to talk to you about. So, what would you say? What is the connection from ancient times and today when we take gold into perspective? We can see in present times that gold is traded heavily, but most of that trade is actually trade of certificates that someone owns the gold, which is quite
Yes.
different than actually having physical gold in one's possession, which we can
Yes.
see quite clearly now when many nations, for example Germany, is asking to see their gold and being denied that because of a variety of stupid reasons. Michael, where is the gold?
Well, in the true words of all native people around the world, when the conquistadors arrived in the Americas and in Mexico, and they found the native people there with huge amounts of gold, they couldn't understand where they got all the gold from. Everything was made from gold, right? There was so much gold there that the Spaniards were sending ships for years. They were filling ships with gold and sending them back to Europe. And every time they asked the native people, anywhere in the world, where does the gold come from? Whose gold is it? There was always a simple answer. The gold belongs to the gods. The gold does not belong to the people. And this is why money was never gold. If you go back in human history, silver was always the metal used for money, never gold. They would, every now and then, they would mint a few ceremonial coins made out of gold because it was very important, because the gold belongs to the gods, and it still does today. And this is why they don't trade the real gold, they trade certificates. Because they can't stop the gold trading now, because that's part of the enslavement. That's part of the keeping the matrix alive. So, and this is also part of the whole corporatization of our planet. Everything is turned into a corporation, including human beings, as you know. So the gold is being traded, but what's important here is that, think about this: our entire human history. All the reasons why we are here, and the main reason for it is gold. We as the human race are here as a species because we were the slaves in the gold mines for the Anunnaki. So gold is inextricably connected to the origins of the human race, and that is absolutely important to recognize. The other important thing is that the Anunnaki were not after the yellow heavy gold, metal gold. They were after the monoatomic form of gold, which is the best kept secret from the humans, the dumb human slaves. And that knowledge was only passed on to the high priests and the alchemists that were working with the Anunnaki to convert their gold into monoatomic gold through the various alchemical processes. And that white powder of gold became very important because they used that for all kinds of purposes, and we're only scratching the surface. It wasn't just used for consumption to keep them alive and forever and immortal and perfect and free of disease and so forth, but it also helps to connect them to the universe, to make them connect to universal knowledge and the Akashic records and the morphogenetic field and so forth. But at the same time, I believe they use the very specific properties of monoatomic gold, possibly in combination with other nanoparticle technology or other synthetically created DNA that created some sort of a shield around their planet, and possibly around planet Earth itself, that shielded their activity and their thoughts from other beings of higher consciousness, so they wouldn't be discovered what they were doing on planet Earth, because what they were doing here was potentially breaching the Prime Directive. Now, I must quickly come back here because I don't think I finished the whole thing about the Prime Directive earlier.
Yeah.
The reason why Enki chose to encode the full DNA potential into the human being is because he knew if he did that, he would not breach the Prime Directive. And this is critical. This is really important, because if you breach the Prime Directive, what is the consequence of breaching the Prime Directive? Now, first of all, we need to understand and identify what the prime directive is. It is not an instruction from somebody sitting on a cloud or some creator or some president or universal council that have made up the prime directive. No, the prime directive could actually be better translated or explained as the prime resonance frequency of the primordial unified source of the universe and creation and everything in creation. The prime resonance frequency of the primordial creation itself.
Something that came from Creator, right?
Yes. And you cannot go against the prime directive or the prime resonance frequency of the Creator. Because the moment you do that, you are in dissonance. You are not coherent. You create a dis-ease within your own being, and you will be destroyed. So the moment you breach the prime directive, you begin your own demise, and eventually you will destroy yourself.
Okay, Michael, I propose that we take a short break with one song, and we will talk about your challenges with the banking industry, not only you but the other peoples in South Africa. What do you say? Let's play a song and continue in 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned.
Moment of desperation, I forget all the lessons I've learned. I'm a victim of my constellation. It's a Taurian thing, so I've heard. As I stand, I can feel them crumble, all those solid foundations I've laid. While I speak, I begin to mumble. It is clear that it might be too late. As a matter of fact, I'll go back and I'll beg and I'll say I'm a fool, please forgive me. Oh, I will stand by your side and I'll swallow my pride and I'll prove to you I have it in me. Oh, it's a symptom that's systematic. Oh, I'm convinced I have defective genes. Oh, while I'm overly diplomatic, oh, I'll miss out on the dreams of my teens. So the challengers call and they beckon, oh, while distractions come at you like rain. And the options you stake your claim on can so easily drive you insane. But I know where I've been and I know what I've seen, and it's time that I made some decisions. My colonial style in a country so wild could result in a deadly obsession. But I know where I've been and I know what I've seen, and it's time that I made some decisions. My colonial style in a country so wild could result in a deadly obsession. In a moment of desperation, I resort to less noble escapes, while I search for some form of salvation. I get caught up in shady crusades. I can count on my drive to stand up, to survive and to heal me from spells of depression. and my maverick belief in my God and my grief will absolve me in times of confession. In a moment of desperation, I believe in the power of love. In a flash of return hesitation, da-da-da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee-da.
Možda nisam Željko Kerum, al slušam Radio Liberum.
Okay, we are back in the air with Michael Tellinger. Michael, tell me, will we have a certain copyright issues with the author of this song?
You took me by surprise there, you know, Vladimir. I heard that. I thought, what's going on? Did I accidentally hit play on my computer or something?
Well, for those who do not know, this song was performed by the South African artist Michael Tellinger, and the song was called "Moment of Desperation."
Oh. That's amazing. I'm surprised you found it.
Well, I usually prepare for the interviews quite thoroughly.
We do our research, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for people that don't know, what I didn't mention right up from, I come from a musical family. My mother was an opera singer. I grew up, always surrounded by musicians and music, and I never imagined that I would do anything else. And when I left university, although I graduated with a degree in pharmaceutics, I played music, and I spent the first 10 years of my life after school playing music in bands and playing on stage and television and theater, and I always thought I'd be playing music until I had an enlightening moment, and I realized that music was not really the path that I had chosen in another reality, I guess, and the reason why I probably didn't become famous in the music field is because this is far more important what I'm doing now.
Okay, let's get back to our topics. Banking industry and your challenge. You did challenge the banking industry in South Africa. On our website, we did translate a couple of articles that were published in New Era and about 10 questions to the banks, And,
yes.
Can you tell us how did it all start? These challenges to the banking industry with you and
it's really Scott Kundal, who you mentioned, New Era, New Economics Rights Alliance. I actually had lunch with Scott today, and Scott and I go back many years. He's an incredible human being. He's one of the smartest people you'll ever find, and he's just passionate about humanity and righteousness and honor and integrity. He's a martial arts expert, and he's just a beautiful human being to have as a friend. And about 5 years ago, Scott and I started, meddling in the sovereign human and the free man on the land subject, and finding these other people around the world that started talking about sovereignty, and that we actually born as free human beings, and then we get enslaved through our birth certificates and our ID documents, so that our countries take control of us as little corporations. And we started learning all about this, and it didn't make much sense. As you know, when you first come across that information, it's just unbelievable. You can't believe that this kind of stuff could be happening.
Mind-boggling, yeah.
Yeah, and then we started realizing how banks and corporations are involved in the manipulation of living, breathing human beings, which are different from, Mr. Tellinger or Mr. Jones or Mrs. Smith. Those are little corporations. They've got nothing to do with living, breathing human beings, and how banks use the names in our birth certificates and on our ID documents, and they use that against us to create money, with our signatures. And we started realizing that what they do when you sign a piece of paper in a bank, what you've actually done is you've created a bill of exchange. And we started investigating and learning about the bills of exchange and the Bills of Exchange Act in South Africa that's got different names in every other country around the world, and it goes back thousands of years to the origins of money and how bills of exchange were already created in clay tablets. But this is new information that's actually in my brand new book. But 5 years ago, we were just very naively looking at how banks work, how they create money out of nothing, that it's just fiat currency, that it has no value at all. And we started to realize, hold on, these guys are committing crimes against humanity. And they're committing fraud by asking money from us because they didn't actually lend us anything. They pretend to lend us, and then they create something on a computer, and then you have to work for it for the rest of your life. And then we realize that when you make an offer to purchase a house or a car or anything with your signature on that offer to purchase, you've actually created a promissory note and a bill of exchange. And we were just fascinated by this, and it was at that time that I was behind a few months with my house mortgage, and this was in 2010, and Scott said to me, you know what, just write the bank an email and tell them they must send you the original copies of the promissory note that you made and the original contract, the wet ink document. So which I did. So I sent the bank an email when they asked for payment, and I said, I believe that you're no longer in possession of the original contracts, and I'd like to come view the contracts and see proof that you actually have. And I was denied. I was denied that categorically. And the moment that happened, I realized, okay, we're onto something here. And this was a house, it wasn't a house that I lived in. It was another house that I bought as a speculative property to invest in, right? Yeah. So I thought, okay, I'll use that property because if I lose it, it's going to be bad, but it's not going to put me on the street.
You wanted to test it on your own skin, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to be able to say,
that's what we do here.
Yes. I wanted to be able to say is I've done it. I'm not just talking about it. Right. So I resisted the bank, and then I refused to pay them anything until they produced the documentation. They refused to produce the documentation. Then I said to them, I want to pay off the entire home loan. Please, can you send me a full outstanding balance? Send me a bill for the final amount. And the bank refused to do that, believe it or not. They did not want to send me a bill for the final amount. And that's when I realized, hold on, these guys are just, everything that I've been learning from these other sources around the world was true. Yeah. So we started the process. We started the process of resisting payment, demanding proof of ownership of the documents, the contract and the promissory notes, and they didn't produce it. Instead, they then sued me, and I decided then to defend myself against them on my own without any lawyers, and go to court, the Supreme Court of Johannesburg, and defend myself against the highest paid lawyers that money can buy. And that was an interesting experience, and it lasted for 3 years. In fact, it is not over yet, because I'm still going back into court on the 12th of February, trying to defend a 260,000 Rand court order to pay the costs of the bank, their lawyers' fees, for the 3-year-long case against me for the home loan, which they eventually got a fraudulent judgment where the judge read a pre-written judgment. After 3 hours of argument in the court, the judge pulled out a piece of paper and read the judgment. It was pre-written.
Well, from our experience, Michael, banks, judicial systems, and the government all sleep in the same bed in perfect harmony. So
Oh, yes.
That is something that is expected. That is something
Yeah.
that one can expect, but
But you see, Vladimir, the thing is that I had to do that so that I could learn it for myself, and so that I could understand it and be right there at the coalface, facing the monster in the eyes, facing them face to face, listening to their arguments, their lies and deception under oath in court, saying that they do not securitize home loans, and then the next time in court say, yes, they do securitize home loans, but they did not securitize mine. Lies like that. And the judge did not question them once on any of the arguments that I presented. They were not cross-examined once. Everything the bank said is treated as gospel, as absolute truth. Everything that you present, me or the person defending themselves, everything that we present as human beings is treated as lies and deception. So you can clearly see that, as you said, the judicial system is there to uphold the laws of the corporation.
absolutely.
And the corporation I'm referring to is the corporation called the Republic of South Africa. And this is fantastic. So it was a 3-year university of life that I went through, learning very quickly, but at least reaching very important knowledge from my own experience that we can now share with everybody else in the world. And I know that others in other countries have done the same, and we've all reached the same conclusion. And I know from my own experience and from Scott's experience that there are now probably already at least 1,000 people in South Africa that have already benefited from our actions against the banks. Because what the people now know, excuse me, what the people now know is when they get into court, the first thing they must ask for is, where is the original wet ink contract?
Yeah.
Without the document, there can be no hearing. It's as simple as that, and the judge will throw it out. Not only will the judge throw it out, because he knows that's the one thing he can't do that, because then he'll be seen as being a fraud.
Well, it is a private matter, you know. Okay, you claim that that I owe you something. Okay, show me the written contract that says that I owe you something. If they cannot produce it, there can be no case, right? And
Yes.
that is the knowledge that you gained from your own case.
Yes. But it comes in such strange ways, because it happened the first day that I was in court. If I'd known it then, I would have stopped it right there, and I probably would not have lost my house, because they auctioned my house. It was sold, and anyway. So what happened actually is I paid the bank with a bill of exchange. Now, if people don't understand this, it's not simple to understand, because the entire financial and legal system is so convoluted and it's structured to be complex, so that the average person on the street doesn't understand what the hell is going on, because they've made it so convoluted and so complex, because that's how they keeps confusing the people. But in the end, the pieces of paper that they shuffle around, the money that we use, are all worthless pieces of paper. In the end, they're all just promises to pay, and nobody ever gets paid. And it just goes around and around and around. And this is how the lie is kept alive.
Yeah, things are twisted around. They somehow manage to persuade us that we are the debtors, but actually we are the creditors.
Yes.
It's all twisted around, and truth is coming out at unprecedented speed. In my humble opinion, you know, we also do the similar things here in our country. We are challenging the system on all levels, including the corporate system, the government corporate system, the judicial system, everything. And the illusion is starting to disintegrate, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that we are on a good path, you know, all of us, from all around the world.
Vladimir, it's happening, as you said, at a very rapid rate. And I just hope that, you know, my new book that I released about a week ago on the subject, that shows how it works in great detail, how banks create money out of thin air, how it's all controlled by the central banks, how the legal system is involved in it, how the legal system has been, you know, developed from the maritime law into the law they use in the courts today, how it's all connected, and we're just being totally enslaved by the system. So I trust that my book will help people to give people confidence and become a shield and a security blanket for people that are new to this, so they're no longer afraid, that they can take the book and show it as evidence to other people that are arguing with them or just cannot believe it. Say, here's the proof. Now stop being silly, stop defending a corrupt system, and wake up. You know, so
I'll just jump in with a little advertisement of your book. It costs only $10 to purchase the PDF version that you can get from www.michaeltellinger.com, and also at what is the website?
At Ubuntu Party.
Ubuntu Party, yes. So it's quite valuable knowledge that you can access for only $10. So
3 years of university of the Supreme Court of Johannesburg and the Constitutional Court in South Africa. 3 years of university of the global banking system in one book.
Yeah. Okay. Let me use this opportunity to invite our listeners to, if they can, to help Radio Liberum, that is hosting this show. Radio Liberum is operating on extremely tough conditions, because they have a habit to publish the truth, and the systems of control. Government does not like that. So everyone that can donate or contribute to Radio Liberum is most welcome to do so. I believe that you have the information on the website that you are accessing right now when you are listening to the show. Contact them, help if you can, and if you wish, and Barney, the head of the Radio Liberum, will absolutely appreciate it.
Breathe easier.
Yeah, because we still live in the world that requires money to perform. That is the reason that also, Michael, you need money to do what you do, until we transfer this society into the society without money. Before we get to that, let me ask you one last question about the money and the banking system. You successfully delivered a memorandum, March Against the Banks, to South African Reserve Bank. Yeah. And we translated that article on our website, but we do not have feedback. What happened next? Can you fill us with information about what happened next with that memorandum?
I was actually surprised, because not one of the banks, we delivered it to 5 banks and the South African Reserve Bank as well, because the 5 major banks' headquarters are all in Johannesburg, but the South African Reserve Bank is in Pretoria. So not one of the banks responded.
Sorry?
But, wow, that was an interesting sound. Is that a guitar?
No, it's not a guitar. That was Barney adjusting my microphone.
Oh, the spring on the microphone, yes. And the South African Reserve Bank responded with an official letter from the registrar of the bank or the assistant, or I can't remember, but it's actually on the Ubuntu website. I posted the response on the Ubuntu website. If you go onto the ubuntuparty.org.za website and just scroll down on the news, in the news section, go to July. It'll be sometime in July, I think, that I posted it, their response, which was very interesting. And they basically said that they reserve their right not to respond, because the questions that I pose are sub judice. They are the subject of an ongoing court case at the Constitutional Court against New Era, and therefore they decline to respond to any of the questions. They just always have a way to weasel their way out of it, and which was absolute lies, because there was no court case. New Era was not in a court case against them. There was nothing sub judice about it. They just made it up. So that's where it sits. But we didn't expect any response from the banks, because they can't respond. Because if they respond, then they incriminate themselves immediately. And if they respond to any of those questions, that means they're committing crimes against humanity, and so therefore they can't respond.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about politics.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that Nelson Mandela recently died, and now we can see gathering of world political, let's call them elite, in South Africa. You did have the opportunity to meet Nelson Mandela in person. So, what can you say about Nelson and his legacy? You are a South African. You must have an opinion.
Yeah, I have a very strong opinion on this. I believe that Nelson Mandela was completely abused by the system. He was used for his humanitarian stance, and the love of the people for Nelson Mandela was used and abused so that they could manipulate the ruling party, the ANC, into the fascistic dictatorship that it has become, doing what they want, when they want it, selling the country to foreign corporations, to private corporations, allowing the people to be more and more enslaved, and basking in the legacy of Nelson Mandela. So this is what is, I believe, very, very meticulously planned by the ANC to stage the death of Nelson Mandela when it was the right time, at which point they had planned and prepared the whole public relations and marketing exercise from his death until the elections in 2014. Now, remember that the Ubuntu Party, which I created, is going to be running in the elections in 2014. So we're going to need all the support from the international people for the South African movement and the activity of the Ubuntu Party during the elections. Because if the people in South Africa feel that there's a huge amount of support from people around the world for the Ubuntu movement and the Ubuntu Party, it'll give the people in South Africa confidence to also then go, wow, everyone's talking about the Ubuntu Party in Europe and in America and in Australia, where this must be the party that we should be voting for. But to come back to Nelson Mandela, I believe that, as you know, Nelson Mandela died many months ago, and he was just kept alive on a synthetically alive on a breathing system, and they then decided when they were ready with all their planned activities to finally pull the plug. And now they're basking in the glory of Nelson Mandela, and unfortunately the political party that the ANC is today is very far removed from the ANC of Nelson Mandela when he was in jail doing time for trying to liberate the people of South Africa. And that is what I believe the great crime against the people of South Africa is. They have completely desecrated the message of Nelson Mandela, our current politicians and the ANC, and they have destroyed the foundation that actually the ANC stood for, and that foundation was known as the Freedom Charter. And it's for that reason that the Ubuntu Party has adopted what I call the new Freedom Charter, and the new Freedom Charter has just taken the original Freedom Charter and adapted it for today, replaced the apartheid sentiments with economic slavery and sentiments and exposure of the crimes against humanity by the financial system. And I believe that the new Freedom Charter is a very powerful document that many people have commented when they read it, they cried like a child. So I hope that it'll have a positive effect on many people, and not only in South Africa but around the world.
Well, it is quite a noble intent, Well, you are a founder of Ubuntu political party and liberation movement, but can you tell us why did you decide to take that approach? Do you believe that slavery system in power can be changed from inside if you win the elections?
I believe it can certainly be changed from the inside, because it's when you're inside you can inject the virus. You can't inject the virus from the outside. From the outside you're just throwing stones at the building. From the inside you can actually inject the virus into the air conditioning, right? And into the bloodstream of the system. And but that's not really the reason. First of all, I didn't start the Ubuntu Party because I want to go into politics. I started the Ubuntu Party because I knew that many of the statements that I'll be making will be so radical and so full of emotion and so anti-establishment that it could be seen as treason. And that if I didn't have a political platform to hide behind, if you want to call it that I could actually be put in jail. But now, because it's a political party, an official party recognized by the Constitution of South Africa, it is my right to voice my opinion on what the current regime is doing wrong and presenting alternative solutions as part of the manifesto of the political party. If I'd been presenting the solutions without being a political party, it would have been seen to be possibly terrorist activity or something like that.
But,
so that was the main reason. It was for protection purposes.
But the political system is designed in a way that it either corrupts or either embraces those who enter that system. It is designed to protect itself by its own institutions and the web of controlling mechanisms.
Yes.
What makes you think that if you win, it will not suck you in and force you to make compromises? Someone will say, you do this and I will do that, or even worse, if you do not do this, I will do that. What makes you think that you can escape that scenario?
I don't know if I can escape that scenario. Well, I don't think I can escape that scenario. I know that I can escape that scenario because the entire Ubuntu and contributionism philosophy is fundamentally completely different to anything that has been presented by the current and past political and socio-economic models. The Ubuntu model is on the complete opposite side because it works without money. The moment you remove money from the system, there can be no corruption. Nobody can offer you something that you cannot get. Nobody can tell you, I'll give you this if you do that, because you can get anything you want. And this is why I call it a self-correcting system that cannot be screwed up or cannot be corrupted. So it's all about people taking control. And let me also remind your listeners, which we keep forgetting, is that the government is the servant of the people. We appoint our governments and our leaders to be the servants of the people, to do what the people want and need. That has not been happening for more than 200 years. The governments have not delivered. The leaders that have been put in place have been either corrupt, or they've been bought, or they've been killed and assassinated and replaced by corrupt leaders. So this is the situation. So the moment you remove money from the system, you have changed history forever. Don't just change the money, remove the money. Because as long as you got any form of money, you will be corruptible. The system will be corruptible, and people will be able to be corrupted or bribed or extorted or manipulated. The moment there's no money, you cannot control the people.
Okay, but let me allow myself to be a devil's lawyer for a minute or two. I believe that democracy is the worst possible governing system. It's run by elections. People elect their representatives to govern.
I agree with you, and actually I write in great detail on exactly what you're talking about in my new book on democracy.
Okay.
It's not a good system.
Yeah, it's not a good system. But you're entering a democratic elections, as a political party, and if you win, what about the free will of the people, that rely on the system and they do not want to be changed? They do not want the system to be changed. What gives you the right to interfere with the free will of those who want to preserve the current system?
That right will be given to the people to decide. And this is why the contributionist and the Ubuntu system is so beautiful, because there will be people that will want to live in a moneyless contributionist society, and those that like the way things are can continue living in those communities. How long do you think the people that slave away, imagine if you start allowing people that want to live in contributionist communities, if you allow them the freedom to do exactly that and create the abundance and everything they need for themselves, while those that want to continue as it is, allow those to continue. How long do you think that the people in the cities will want to do that when they see their friends in the beautiful towns and villages and around the country live in paradise while they slave away in the cities? How long do you think they're going to want to stay in the cities?
Well, I don't know. It's just a question. Let's imagine a school teacher, who has, I don't know, two years to work until his pension, and he does not want any changes into the system. If you win the elections by democratic principles, and you do change the system, you dismantle the government, you give power back to the people, you give everything, but there are still minds of the people, and the people who do not agree with that, that is why I personally do not vote, because I feel that I do not have the right to impose my beliefs on anybody,
But that's exactly what I just explained to you. You will not impose the thing on anybody. If we had to win the elections, I've said immediately that the first thing I'll do is dissolve the government. Look, let's not be foolish here. Nobody is happy. Even the rich people are unhappy. Everybody is miserable. The rich people are scared of the poor people stealing their money. The poor people are scared because they don't know how they're going to survive next month or next week or next year. everybody is miserable. People hate their lives. They hate their jobs. They hate the fact that they have to get up in the morning and catch a bus or a train or ride a bicycle or sit in traffic for 2 hours to go to a stinking job that they don't like, but they have to do because they have to earn money to pay for bread and milk and electricity and rent or mortgage. So they, at the end of the month, they just have to do it over and over again until they die.
Yeah.
Most people are unhappy about this. And if you give people an option to get out of it, if that teacher that you mentioned, the teacher, and just once again, Vladimir, in my book, I go into it in a lot of detail. So for people that are confused about this, don't be confused. I know the most frequently asked questions, and I know what most people are thinking now because I've heard it more than 10,000 times. So I'm well exposed to this and the way people think about this when they first start to think about it. The teacher that was going to retire on a lousy retirement that wouldn't even allow him to pay for electricity, to tell you the truth, do you think he'd rather retire or live in an Ubuntu community where he's got free electricity, as much food as he wants, where he can actually participate in hobbies and his skills, practice his skills that he's good at for his own for his own benefit and his own satisfaction, while he's actually benefiting everyone else in his community? Let me tell you what, there's going to be nobody in the world that is going to take option 1. Everybody will want to take option 2. I don't care what argument you throw at me, because people are sick and tired. And the options that you raised are, first of all, people's retirements are not certain because banks are folding all the time. So you're not even certain that you're going to get a retirement.
Yeah, well, Michael, I will step out of the shoes of the devil's lawyer. I agree with you completely, and I would like to talk to you more about this Ubuntu philosophy, Ubuntu movement. Well, as I understand, Ubuntu is not Ubuntu if it is conditional, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so as I see, you propose Ubuntu movement as sort of a transfer from money-controlled system into community without the money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, can you tell me, are there any Ubuntu communities yet? And what would the estimated number of people that are required to make one of these communities prosperous on a scale that can pull other communities to do the same?
Yeah. And I think what you said there is really important, and I would like your listeners to think about this, because there's a difference between an Ubuntu contributionist community that creates abundance beyond their own needs and a difference between self-sustained communities. A big difference. In scientific terms, it's called a closed system as opposed to an open system. And the scientists that are listening to this will know that what we discovered through Newtonian physics and the way that we see science or physics, that many of us have been taught physics, is that closed systems ultimately fail and they will suffocate themselves. And this is why if you create a self-sustained community that only looks after itself,
it will
you're
die.
Just creating, you're going to die.
Yeah.
You're going to create. It's just another bigger version of a selfish individual.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
It's a selfish community. They only care about their own needs and screw everybody else on the outside. That's why most of these so-called self-sustained communities have not been as successful as they could be. They are successful for the people that are inside, but they do not export the success and share the success with people on the outside. So the model that I propose is the open model, the open system, where in an Ubuntu contributionist community, you produce what I refer to as the 3 times principle. You produce 3 times as much as what your community needs, so that after you've used everything that you create for your community, so that it's free to everybody, you make what you've got in excess, 2/3 of it, available to the communities around you at a fraction of the price that they can get it in their own towns. The moment you've created that model, you've destroyed and collapsed their capitalistic system, and they then have to follow the same system you've got. And do you think they will not want to follow it? Of course they're going to want to follow it, because they'll already be coming to your town to get the milk, to get the sugar, to get the clothes, to get the building materials, to get the cheese and the bread and whatever else that you're producing in your town and your community, to get the computers, if that's what you're making, if you've got, rocket scientists and technical people in your community. Everybody from your surrounding communities will be coming to you to get their stuff, because it's a fraction of the cost they have it there. And they will see that you in your community is getting free electricity, free water, free bread, free milk, free everything. You pay very little money for anything, and they're going to want the same thing. So this is the big difference.
That is sort of a bridge from the money-controlled system into the community without money, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think what can play a very important role, and the catalyst for this, is energy. And I'll explain to you why. Because in my little town, and this is why I'm so determined to use my little town as an example of an Ubuntu village. So when your question earlier, Vladimir, was, are there such communities? My answer to that is no. Because if there was such a community, the whole world would be rapidly turning into an Ubuntu community.
Well, we better make our best efforts to create one.
Yes. It's only going to take one. The first community
domino
that
effect.
does this is going to be the domino effect for every other town to do the same.
Great.
That's what I have no doubt about that. So I want to just share with you, for example, if people are thinking, well, how can they initiate it in your town or in your village or in your community? Energy could be the key that you can use. Now, if you can find a free or a cheap source of energy that you can bring to your town, that can be brought by the people together, once that source of energy has been implemented, that everybody basically has free electricity. Now, we want to do that with the river in my town, and we have a perfect situation where we can put about 10 hydro turbines under the bridge, and that will create enough electricity so that everybody can get free electricity in town. That will be like heaven. It will be like it's a miracle of unimaginable proportion. But now that you can give the people free electricity, you can use the electricity as leverage for the people to participate in various community projects. And this, I believe, could be a very quick transition to encourage people to get free electricity. All you have to do is work for 3 hours or 5 hours a week on various community projects that the community has created, and continues creating more and more community projects. So if you live in a town of 1,000 people, imagine if you contribute 3 hours a week towards community projects, that's 12,000 hours a week of man hours or work hours. Do you know what you can do with 12,000 hours a week? You can create miracles. Are you there?
Yeah, we're having trouble with the microphone. Give me just a minute to fix it.
Vladimir, I think I lost you.
Yeah, Vladimir is here, but we're having trouble with the microphone, so please be patient for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope that I'm giving you some interesting scenarios. But as I said, to talk about this in a short discussion is always difficult. But what I'm saying is that the transition from a money-driven society to a moneyless society is not going to be seamless. It's not going to happen in one step. It's going to happen in several steps. But that does not mean it has to take a long time. It doesn't mean it has to take 10 years. It can happen in 2 years or 3 years or even 1 year if the community is really close together and they decide things very quickly. So you just think about this and think it through.
I believe that it is doable because the consciousness of the people is emerging. It's rising.
Yes.
People are waking up, and these concepts are. I think that they are ready for implementation on a larger scale, and.
Absolutely, and you're quite right. As you said, the consciousness is rising. And also the desperation of the people is rising. So it's a combination of consciousness, and the people are getting more and more desperate. They're looking for new answers, new solutions, because they know that what we've had has not worked.
Yeah. Michael, I do have one last question for you before we end this interview. What would your message be to your brothers and sisters in Croatia and to your brothers and sisters all around the world?
My message is, do not be afraid. Inform yourself. Embrace the philosophy of Ubuntu. Learn about it. Try to understand it. And share this information with everybody you meet. The more people know about it, the more people talk about it, the more people they share it and understand it. Once you realize that it's the only way forward, then there is no turning back. And there can be no doubt in your mind. You have to be very clear about this, but don't be afraid. There will be a beautiful moment that you'll experience, like I did, like thousands of other people have experienced, when the penny drops for you and you suddenly get it and you understand, oh my God, this is it. I understand. I get it. We don't need money. Money is the tool of enslavement. Money is the hurdle to all progress. It is the reason for the 7 deadly sins. It is the thing that keeps tripping us up. But once that penny drops for you and you have that aha moment, then there's no turning back. So my message to everybody is really, don't be afraid and explore this. Think about it and discuss it with everybody. And then follow what we're doing on the Ubuntu website. There's a lot of information. We now have members in 175 countries around the world. So clearly the people around the world are all thinking the same thing. We need a new system. Do not feel that you're alone. You are joined and in spirit and in consciousness by millions and millions of people around the world. Now start using your voice and raising your voice. Remember, we are not the 99%. We are the 99.99%. So let's show our strength in unity.
Michael, thank you very much for this interview. It was quite an experience for me, and I believe for our listeners too. Thank you again. Let's hope we will do this again. And
I would certainly love to do that, Vladimir.
Yeah. Michael, thank you very much. And that's it. That's it for now. Please let me know when you study that email that I sent you, okay?
Yes, yeah. I will. I look forward to reading that, actually.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll sign out with English part of this show with a song from Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, Heaven. Dobra večer, evo nas nazad u satu istine broj 14. Naravno, produkcija Radio Liberum i OPPT.
Zakaj svi vele Liberum umjesto Liberum?
Liberum?
Liberum, da, svi imaju naglasak. Valjda je lakše to izgovoriti, tak, ne?
Da, vjerovatno. Evo, u ovom dijelu emisije na hrvatskom jeziku trebao nam se pridružiti Dražen, ali evo javio se da nažalost uletilo mu je nešto iznenadno pa ne može.
Kužiš ti to, južnoafrikanac ne zajebe, a Hrvat zajebe.
Ma da, mislim plan je bio otprilike sat i 15 minuta intervju sa Michael Tellingerom, ali
Razvukli
Evo,
smo
malo se razvuklo, bilo je zaista sjajno i eto, zato nam je ispao ovaj drugi dio emisije gdje je trebao biti sa nama i Dražen.
Ali ćemo zato pustiti telefone.
Da, evo, otvaramo telefone. Tema o kojoj smo htjeli razgovarati je bio posljednji članak koji smo objavili danas na našoj web stranici, koji se bavi jednom vrlo zanimljivom tematikom, a vezana je za ljude koji rade u državnim službama. Objavili smo jedno otvoreno pismo za njih koje je bilo potaknuto sa opet jednim pismom koje sam ja dobio od jednog našeg čitatelja. Jel? Evo, dakle, telefonska linija je kako ona, 01
8000 873.
Ako se neko želi uključiti sa bilo kakvim pitanjem, slobodni ste to učiniti. A eto, dok čekamo možda nekog slušatelja da nam se priključi, možda da kažem nekoliko riječi o tom članku kojeg možete pročitati na našoj web stranici. Dakle, otvoreno pismo. Barni, kak se zove? Kak je uopće članak nazvan?
Koji je ovaj zadnji?
Zadnji, malo je duži.
Sad ćemo
duži naslov
otvoriti pa ćemo pročitati.
Složna braća kuću
da.
grade, jel?
Da, složna braća kuću grade, otvoreno pismo braći i sestrama unutar državnih službi.
Tako je, da, htjeli smo pričati malo o tome. Dražen i ja, Dražena danas nema. Nažalost, evo samo ukratko, dakle, na naš mail dobivamo zaista puno pitanja od ljudi kako postupiti u ovom ili onom slučaju koji ih muči. I nadam se da svi razumiju da mi ne možemo nekome dati nekakav savjet kako bi se u određenoj situaciji trebao postaviti, ne možemo dati nekakva gotova rješenja, ali ono što možemo dati je nekakvo naše mišljenje, koji put to napravi Dražen, koji put to napravim ja, koji put to napravi neko treći o određenom problemu koji ljudi imaju. I prije nekog vremena dobio sam jedan takav mail od našeg čitatelja koji je imao određen problem sa nekakvom kaznom koju je dobio od službe nekakve koja radi za grad i zamolio je za pomoć šta da radi sa time. I ja sam mu, eto, ne znam koliko sam mu pomogao, ali iznio sam mu svoje mišljenje o tom određenom problemu. I čovjek je poduzeo nekakve određene akcije po tom pitanju i evo, javio se neki dan i mi smo to njegovo pismo uključili u ovaj zadnji članak. Ono što smo iz toga naučili je da su ljudi koji rade u državnim institucijama dobili naputak da proučavaju našu stranicu oppthrvatska.wordpress.com kako bi se mogli pripremiti na izazove koji bi se pred njima mogli naći kad ljudi krenu osporavati njihove zahtjeve. I evo, rezultat toga je bio taj članak koji smo danas objavili, koji se direktno obraća upravo tim ljudima koji su takav naputak dobili. Pa evo, predlažem da tko nije da si uzme malo vremena da ga pročita, posebno ako ste vi jedni od tih koji rade u državnim službama. Ne znam što bih više rekao. Imamo kakvog slušatelja, Barni?
Pa nema, evo, možemo jedino još jedan put ponoviti broj. Dakle, broj je 01 pozivni za Zagreb. Obična je telefonska linija, ne morate se bojati, nije neki skupi telefon. Pozivni za Zagreb je 01, broj je 8873. Dakle, 8000 873. Ako imate bilo kakva pitanja, pozivni za Zagreb je 01. Pozivni za Hrvatsku je 385, da.
što se mene tiče, možete nazvati ako imate kakav dobar vic za ispričati.
Naravno. Ako se ne javi niko za 2 minute, idemo ti i ja popit pivicu.
Da.
Da.
Dobro, evo kad smo već tu, reci Barni, ima li kakvih novih informacija vezano za tvoj slučaj koji si imao sa policijskim službenicima?
Pa došli su mi 2 policijska službenika na vrata, dostaviti mi obavijest da će protiv mene biti pokrenut prekršajni postupak zbog vrijeđanja službene osobe, ne? Zbog policajca, vrijeđanja policajca, što je, mislim da se čak i na videu vidi da ja to nisam nikako ne radio. Ne? No, uglavnom, došli su na vrata, po PS-u se predstavili, izvadili značku, službenu iskaznicu i osobnu iskaznicu. Uh-huh. Kužiš? Znači, počeli su se predstavljati kak spada, ne? Ja naravno nisam htio ništa potpisati. Probali su mi... Prvo, a vi ste gospodin Vugrinović? Rekao je nisam. Kako niste? Rekao, to mi je samo ime, ne? I tako je počela igra sa njima. Nisam naravno htio potpisati, ostavili su mi pred vratima. Nisam htio ni primiti u ruke, probali su mi uvaliti u ruke. Naravno, po njihovom nekakvom tom članku 80 pravilnika, dovoljno da stave na vidljivom mjestu. No što kad smo bili gotovi, ja velim, dečki, jel to? Velim mi, da, to je to. Rekao, hvala lijepo, i zatvorim vrata, ostalo je vani pismo, ne? Uh-huh. I čujem kroz vrata kako veli policajac, veli doista takni za vrata i slike, veli da imamo dokaz, ne? Ja sam se naravno počeo smijat ko budala unutra. I kad smo otišli, čuo sam lift da ide, uzeo sam pismo, pročitao i u prvoj rečenici našao grešku. Tako dobro, mislim, odgovorio sam uglavnom i mislim da je to na tome stalo, ali uglavnom što se tiče one kazne za prelazak preko ceste, to se nije desilo, nije došla nikako. Uh-huh.
Dobro, pa mislim, ljudi rade svoj posao ili barem misle da rade svoj posao.
Ne, oni rade svoj posao, samo što oni misle da rade legalno. Ne sad legalno, kako bi rekao, drugačije bi rekao. Ne mogu naći riječ.
To je ono što smo naveli u ovom zadnjem članku koji se obraća ljudima koji rade za državne institucije. Ponudili smo nekoliko linkova gdje je jasno objašnjeno za koga oni zapravo rade. Ponudili smo i link na dokumenat Republika Hrvatska DOO gdje je u detalje objašnjeno i dokazano da je lijepa naša domovina pretvorena u tvrtku. Tko je vlasnik te tvrtke još uvijek ne znamo, tražimo, naći ćemo. Budite uvjereni u to, kad nađemo objavit ćemo.
Da, evo imamo komentar, naravno, Pantera. Veli, misle da rade zakonski, a u stvari su stavljeni van zakona. Da, to je bilo to u principu.
Pa je, mislim, puno ljudi pita zašto se naša stranica zove OPPT Hrvatska i tako dalje. Ime naše stranice je zapravo izraz želje da zadržimo povijesnu poveznicu sa događajem koji je zapravo inicirao naš rad. On se dogodio na Božić prošle godine, kada su objavljeni...
Na ravnodnevnicu, ajmo tako reći.
Da. Kada su objavljeni dokumenti One People's Public Trusta, koji su zakonski ukinuli sve financijske institucije na ovoj planeti, sve korporacije na ovoj planeti, zapravo bilo kakav entitet koji koristi privatne novčarske sustave pomaže da ti privatni novčarski sustavi opstanu, a također je zakonski poništio i sve korporativne vlade kojih na planeti ima sve ukupno 193. Puno smo o tome pričali u našim radio emisijama i dosta smo članaka objavili na tu temu, ali u principu mi smo relativno malo pisali o OPPT-u na našoj stranici jer smo željeli ljudima dati nekakav temelj kako bi mogli možda lakše razumjeti to što se dogodilo sa tim dokumentima One People's Public Trusta koji su failirani u
Odi malo bliže mikrofonu.
koji su failirani u UCC ili Uniform Commercial Code, to je recimo to tako trgovački zakonik koji važi na čitavoj planeti, to je dosta dobro objašnjeno na našoj stranici.
Ja mislim, sve na svijetu je komercijalno u principu, ne?
Pa je, mislim, kad pogledate bilo kakvu kaznu, ne, evo ovo što su tebi pokušali napraviti.
Pa da, a kao možeš platiti kao umanjenu kaznu, znači kazna nije kazna, nego je to u principu...
Ali sve se na ovoj planeti vrti oko nekakve komercijalne djelatnosti, a komercijalna djelatnost opet orbitira oko nečega što se zove UCC, i da biste vi komercijalno mogli djelovati u današnjem svijetu, dakle, ista pravila moraju važiti svugdje kako biste vi mogli funkcionirati u trgovini, ne znam, sa Japanom, Bosnom i Hercegovinom, Mađarskom ili unutar Hrvatske. Dakle, sve se nalazi pod nečime što se zove UCC.
Uniform Commercial Code.
Uniform Commercial Code i u Uniform Commercial Code-u postoje određena pravila. Dakle, ako neka tvrdnja nije osporena u točno određenom roku, ona postaje zakon. To se dogodilo sa tim dokumentima OPPT-a, nitko ih nije osporio.
Koliko ja znam još uvijek, znači sada već godinu dana nisu osporeni.
Ni ne mogu više biti osporeni zato što je prošao rok da budu osporeni. Čekali su 5 mjeseci, bili su toliko velikodušni da su im dali 5 mjeseci umjesto 3 dana koliko su bili dužni dati im prema tom zakonu.
3 dana?
3 dana, da.
Čekaj, što nije 28 dana rok?
3 dana.
3 dana?
3 dana. Dali su im 5 mjeseci.
Da, ali je stupilo na snagu 23. siječnja, ako se ja dobro sjećam. Dakle, 28 dana nakon deponiranja su dokumenti stupili na snagu.
Tako je, da, ali kažem, eto, bili su velikodušni pa su odlučili pričekati još malo, sve ukupno 5 mjeseci, nitko to nije napravio
i tada su napravili jednu najčasniju stvar.
Napravili su najčasniju stvar koju su mogli napraviti, jednostavno ukinuli su sami sebe. To je po meni ultimativni dokaz da tu nije bilo nikakvih privatnih interesa iz toga što su napravili. Jednostavno ono što su nama svima ostavili u nasljeđe je određena dokumentacija na koju se mi pravno možemo osloniti.
Da, nekima su ostavili super stvar, a drugima su ostavili totalno sranje.
Kako to misliš?
Pa neki ne žele preuzeti odgovornost.
Da, neki ne žele.
Ja da budem odgovoran, pa nema šanse.
Pa da, recimo da je to bio nekakav komercijalni reset sustava gdje se sve je vratilo na početne pozicije, a ta početna pozicija je puna osobna odgovornost. I za svakoga od nas. Dakle, čak i ljudi koji rade u državnim institucijama koje zapravo više ne postoje pred zakonom, ali one ipak po inerciji i zbog nijekanja istine i dalje funkcioniraju.
I zbog, naravno, neinformiranosti.
I zbog neinformiranosti, tako je. Ove informacije jako, jako teško prodiru do javnosti i evo, naša mala grupa ljudi se trudi koliko je u našim mogućnostima to proširiti među širem krugu ljudi.
Eto, i to je dokaz da ja zbog OPPT-a nemam para. Sve su pipe zatvorene jer smo se odlučili baviti apsolutno samo istinom.
Da. Mislim da je u ovom trenutku važno ljudima koji rade u tim institucijama, bilo da su one financijske institucije, bilo da su to nekakve financijske institucije, banke i tak dalje, vaše tvrtke više ne postoje pred zakonom. I to što vam to nije rečeno može za vas koji poduzimate određene radnje koje mogu naštetiti nekom drugom ljudskom biću koje zna što se dogodilo, koje zna istinu, koja zna da je vaša tvrtka stavljena izvan zakona, može vam nanijeti prilično nezgodne pravne probleme, pravne posljedice, zato što sve što radite pod punom vlastitom odgovornošću, materijalnom i kaznenom. I moguće je da ljudi koji dalje pokušavaju funkcionirati kako su funkcionirali i prije prema pravilima njihove tvrtke koja je stavljena izvan zakona, koja se boji vlastite odgovornosti, zapravo ta odgovornost je prenesena na svakog od nas pojedinačno. I svatko u današnjem svijetu nakon objave dokumenata OPPT-a na Božić prošle godine djeluje pod punom vlastitom odgovornošću, materijalnom i kaznenom. Tako da o tome treba voditi računa kada pokušavate, ovršiti nekoga, jel? To je nešto što se može onak vratiti kao bumerang jednog dana.
Znaš što bi možda bilo dobro? Da ljudima počnemo objašnjavati ovršni postupak, kako to ide.
Pa ovršni postupak.
Jer čak i meni se, znaš, tu mi je upitnik iznad glave kad dođe do ovršnog postupka. Znači, nekome sam poslao obavijesti iz uljudnosti sa cjenikom za korištenje, na primjer, mojih osobnih podataka i on se oglušio na to.
Da. Pa ovako, gledaj, iz mojih saznanja trenutno je podnešeno nekoliko kaznenih prijava protiv ljudi koji rade unutar financijskih institucija, konkretno banaka, i protiv ljudi unutar takozvanih državnih institucija, upravo zbog toga. I mislim da dokle god ljudi neće dakle, probaj to pogledati ovako. Dakle, u mnogim tim predlošcima pisama piše, dakle, ako vi, nastavite određene akcije protiv mene, ja ću vas, smatrati osobno odgovornim i podnijet ću odgovarajuće zakonske korake protiv vas, jel?
Da, i većina u principu blefira,
većina u principu blefira zato što nema hrabrosti da to zaista i napravi, i možda je problem i u tome što se nisu dovoljno informirali o određenoj proceduri.
Naravno.
Činjenica je da mi čak i poništene dijelove sustava možemo ovog trenutka koristiti kako bismo podnijeli takvu nekakvu tužbu protiv nekoga, zbog toga što postoji takozvani prethodni zahtjev. Imali smo jednu kratku
prior claim, da.
Imali smo jednu kratku emisiju o tome prije možda 2 mjeseca ili
24.9.
24.9. Dakle prije skoro 3 mjeseca. Dakle, kad probajte si situaciju zamisliti ovako, jel? Netko tko je ovršen, vi ste nekoga ovršili i sad on kao kontrakorak pokušava ovršiti vas. Kako on to može napraviti? Ne može nikako, jel? Mm-hmm. Zato što postoji taj prethodni zahtjev kojim su oni ovršeni i stavljeni izvan zakona, poništeni su zato što nisu platili ono što su trebali platiti, jel? I to je nešto što je neosporivo na bilo kojem sudu na ovom planeti, jel? Dakle, postoji taj prethodni zahtjev koji se ne može osporiti. On je tamo, on se nalazi u UCC dokumentaciji. UCC dokumentacija može se skinuti sa naše web stranice. Kompletni originalni fajlovi se nalaze tamo i niti jedan sud to ne može osporiti.
Dobro, ovo ćeš mi morati svejedno još jedan put objasniti taj prior claim, jer meni nije jasan.
Ok, zamisli ovako. Ti si meni dužan novac, jel?
Dobro.
Ja sam te ovršio, pravomoćno.
Dobro.
Jel?
I sad ja hoću doći na nulu.
Ti hoćeš doći na nulu tako što ćeš meni poslati kontrazahtjev za ovrhu. Jel?
Dobro.
Kako je to moguće ako nisi platio ono što si meni trebao platiti kad sam te ja ovršio.
Da, ok, sad shvaćam.
O tome se radi. Dakle, to je taj prethodni
Dakle,
zahtjev.
prema UCC-u mi svi imamo prior claim prema njima,
Tako je.
prema institucijama.
Tako je. A da ne pričamo o tome da, evo, zaista imamo brojne dokaze da su institucije za koje smo smatrali da su zakonite institucije naše države najobičnije tvrtke. Oni su se pretvorili u tvrtke. Možda još samo 2-3 riječi o tome da kažem prije nego što završimo emisiju. Kako znamo da su tvrtke? Znamo da su tvrtke zbog toga što imaju nešto što se zove DUNS broj. DUNS broj je jedinstveni broj, nešto što je slično recimo OIB-u. Ne mogu postojati dva takva ista, koji točno identificira određenu tvrtku, određenu korporaciju unutar baze podataka najveće svjetske kompanije koja trguje podacima tvrtke koje se bave raznim poslovima u svijetu. I imamo čak i službeno pismo od Dun & Bradstreeta, te kompanije, koja kaže, odgovorili su na pitanje njemačkih kolega ko može dobiti DUNS broj. Rekli su da DUNS broj mogu dobiti samo tvrtke. Samo tvrtke.
Mhm.
Sad, ako ga mogu dobiti samo tvrtke, razumno pitanje koje si možemo postaviti je zašto Republika Hrvatska ima DUNS broj, zašto Vlada Republike Hrvatske ima DUNS broj, zašto sva ministarstva imaju DUNS broj, zašto svi sudovi imaju DUNS broj, zašto svi gradovi,
Zanimljivo je, FINA ima.
I sve općine, puko mi je zvuk ovdje.
Puko ti je zvuk, možda su se baterije ispraznile.
Dobro, nema veze. Zašto svi gradovi i sve općine imaju DUNS broj? Pa odgovor je vrlo jednostavan, zato što su tvrtke. Ako su tvrtke, čovjek se može zapitati, ok, ako ta tvrtka nešto traži od mene,
Valjda. Neka svira, a?
Neka svira, da.
Za sviru.
Dobro, nema veze. Ok.
Dobro, odsvirat će, sad.
Dakle, ima li ta tvrtka valjan ugovor sa mnom? Da zapravo uopće ima pravo tražiti bilo što od mene. Jel?
Da.
Eto. Dobro, mene ovo jako zbunjuje ova muzika. Ja bi s ovim završio ovu emisiju. Hvala što ste bili sa nama. Evo, do sljedeće prilike. Odjavljujemo se, Barni u režiji, Valter za mikrofonom i evo, nadam se da vam je bilo zanimljivo.
Ja bi sad trebao pustiti jingle, jel? I to bi onda bio kraj, ne?
Ok. Hvala još jednom.
Možda nisam Željko Kerum, ali slušam Radio Liberum.
Now hear this. Got this one coming